This week on the Men at the Movies podcast, we enter the virtual reality of Ready Player One. Reality can be kind of a bummer. Where do you go to escape? In this fast-paced, pressurized life we live, what would it be like to unplug and slow down? And in spite of the discomfort, we tend to sit the fence and chase comfort and stability. What would it be like to go all in? Strap on your goggles, get on your omnidirectional treadmill, and let's discover God's truth in this movie.
The movies and stories we love are gateways to see ourselves and God in new ways.
Every great story borrows its power from a larger story, the story that's written on our hearts and woven into the fabric of our very being. Hello and welcome to the Men at the Movies podcast. My name is Paul McDonald, and I am joined with my friend who's from Indiana, but live from Shelby, North Carolina, Matt Gleaves. Hey, Matt, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing good, Paul, but I'm actually in Gaston, South Carolina.
Gaston, South Carolina. Gaston. Are you sure?
Gaston. Well, I'm actually, the hotel I'm in right now is in Columbia, South Carolina.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, so that's why you're not actually in the house, because you're in Columbia.
Right.
So Matt joining us from Columbia, and it's weird that it takes you, again, living in Indiana, traveling to South Carolina.
Yep.
For us to have a chance, because we've been trying to do the podcast for probably months.
Yeah.
But you keep saying stuff like, yeah, I'm available on Thursday night at 8:30.
Or in the mornings at 3 a.m.
Yeah, I was like, you may want to do it, but this for me is work. So that's outside operating standard business hours.
Yeah. We haven't quite had a great connection, have we?
Yeah, it's just,
regarding the podcast.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
The friendship has really been strong. I can't quit you now.
That is not the movie we're doing.
Yeah.
So we are doing Ready Player One. Came out in 2018. You were telling me before this that this is one of your favorite movies. Why, out of all the movies, we have like over 300 on the list that we could do. Why did you pick this movie?
So what's been interesting is the more I've watched the show, it's really become one of my top 5 favorites. And that says a lot, because whenever I go to, and I don't watch a lot of shows second time, because I feel like I've gotten everything I wanted about the first time. But this one I'll watch over and over and over again. Multiple reasons. I'm sure we'll talk about a lot of them, but I also do a study with guys called Proven Men. It's about sexual integrity. A lot of the rule of thumb is that we tell guys is 97% of men have looked at pornography. The other 3% are lying. And that may be an exaggeration. I know a few guys that's not their deal, but a lot of guys have struggled with it. And so in looking at this movie, like I once in a while have a movie night where I'll invite guys over just to watch a movie. And when my Proven Men guys came over, we watched this one, and they were just like, oh yeah, we get that, because we want to escape reality. And it's so easy. And it's not just about pornography or sexual addiction. It's also about alcohol or drugs or sports or, YouTube or Etsy.
What you got against Etsy?
I don't know. I just was trying to make a bridge the gap there a little bit, but anything that you would do that you would totally immerse yourself with and get away from the reality of life.
You might be thinking, what does this sci-fi movie set now 24 years in the future have to do with porn? Why would you be talking about this sexual integrity and all this other stuff? And the reason is that porn's an easy target because it is so pervasive and so struggled with by the vast majority of men. As you said, it's an escape from reality. And that's what this whole movie is about, and why it's so good, and why we're talking about it. I'm going to tee up the first clip, and this is a funny one. Yeah. Well, it's not a funny clip. It's funny because it's from the end of the movie. So Wade, he wins the contest. He meets the creator. James Holliday, the one who created the Oasis, the virtual reality that most people, the vast majority of people live in. There's this big contest that, hey, get this, you win the contest and you get control of the Oasis. And the Oasis is the name of the virtual reality system. And they're having this conversation, and James Holliday, in our spiritualization of things, he's the creator. Mm-hmm. He's the one who created the world. But the interesting thing is why he created it.
I created the Oasis because I never felt at home in the real world. I just didn't know how to connect with the people there. I was afraid for all of my life, right up until the day I knew my life was ending. And that was when I realized that as terrifying and painful as reality can be, it's also the only place that you can get a decent meal. Because reality is real. You understand what I'm saying?
And I'm not saying he's godlike in that respect. I created the world because I wanted to escape from, the other guys, the angels. I needed a break from them. That's not what we're saying.
We're not trying to over-spiritualize this either.
Right. But what I see in this is something that I see in myself and tons of other men and women. The world is a terrifying and painful place. And we're all looking for a way to escape.
Yes.
And for a lot of guys, that's porn. It's easily accessible. No more going to the gas station or the bookstores and asking for a magazine behind the rack or anything like that.
Or Sears catalog.
Really going old school there.
Yeah.
But there's also this thing is like, why are you guys talking about this? Well, because if you don't talk about it, you leave it in the dark.
Correct.
And if you leave in the dark, it never heals. And you have to shine the light of redemption, the light of transformation on it. Honestly, it's sort of an easy spot. Because if we really wanted to start hitting home, we could talk about fantasy football. Or we could talk about work. Or ministry.
Okay, fantasy football, I could be like, whatever. But work, I'm a recovering workaholic. My name is Matt. I'm a recovering workaholic.
I mean, that is why you're in Columbia, South Carolina, is for work. So
yeah. It's interesting because what I find interesting, and throughout the show, for those of guys who have walked this path that Morpheus told Neo, that there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. The guys that Paul and I, in the circles that we run in, who really seek a genuine relationship with Jesus, there's always these rooms that you go into. And I find it fascinating.
All right. Explain what you mean by rooms you go into.
Okay. Because throughout the movie, there are rooms that Parzival walks into. Wade Watson walks into. There's a place where he has his gear set up that has an omnidirectional track, with whatever it is underneath it. And there's all these other rooms. And at the end of the show, the clip that Paul just played, there's a room that they're going to that's in the crevices in the back corners of James Holliday's mind. And even when they leave, they walk into another room. James Holliday, they're opening a door, and he's taking his younger self. Extremely profound when you look at that.
Oh, yeah. Because I love that piece, that last scene was him and his younger self playing video games.
Yep.
Because in these rooms are areas, they're really just areas of our life. And they might be pop culture. They might be, hey, that stuff hurt and I don't want to deal with it. It could be your relationship with your parents, your kids, your wife. It's these different areas of our hearts. Really. So when we're talking about these rooms we're going into, and I do think life is sort of like a video game. Where these different levels, hey, we've got to get out of the dungeon level. And now there's the jungle level. And now there's the underwater level. Well, our lives are like that in that, hey, now we're dealing with this struggle, this section of our lives, this part of our lives. Well, that younger piece of us kind of gets stuck, especially when some of our tough times, some of the struggles that we've been through. And I can't remember who said it. I'll try to look it up and put it in our resources on the on the webpage, menatthemovies.com/podcast, where I do all my corrections to say, hey, this, but it was something along the lines, we are always every age we've always been, ever been. Mm. So there's parts of us that are still 8 and 12 and 16 and 25.
Yeah.
And you just think of that, and you, like Holiday at the end, he liked having that kid there. He's like, oh yeah, I remember the innocence and the magic of video games and why I loved them in the first place.
So what's amazing is throughout the whole show, they'll refer to James Holiday like a god. They refer to him like, oh, he is amazing. Everybody's in awe of him. And at the end of it, he realized, no, I'm not a god. I'm just a man that has a troubled past as well. And this is why I built it to begin with, was to get away. And he's actually struggling with his own creation in many ways. Thankfully, our Father, God, does not struggle with his creation. He actually reaches out. But as humans, we do struggle with the creation. We struggle with how it's made and fitting in and all that stuff. So I think it's great that we run away.
Well, and like what he said, I made this because I had a hard time connecting with other people.
Yeah.
And this became a safe place for him.
Yeah. So Parzival starts off the show where, hey, the Oasis is where everybody goes. It's where everybody does. And that's where I have all my friends who I've never met.
Right.
But that's where they meet. Yeah. He's never met that. So he's got a friend named H who is this huge cybernetic, and the CGI is amazing. It really looks great.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're flexing.
Yeah. So one of the things that I learned here recently is that the author that wrote the book likes tracking planetary movement, but not on a computer. He just does it old school by hand.
Oh, wow.
Doing calculations. Yeah. So he does that for fun. His idea of fun or mine are different,
Right.
I like sitting down and watching movies. So anyways, I just thought that was fun because here's this guy who throws out these really, a lot of pop culture, a lot of science, a lot of stuff. And it's absolutely fun. So he starts off writing, Parzival starts off saying, hey, this is Ohio in the year 2045. And there's a subtle statement he slips in. He goes, I should have been born in the 80s, but I wasn't. I was born, in 2027 or 2025.
Yeah.
Something like that. And anyways, he goes on to say, in the year 2045, the city I'm living in is the fastest growing, I think it's Columbus, Ohio, is the fastest growing city in the world because it's where Gregorian games got started and where the Oasis was built. And he's laying this down as if historically we know what he's talking about. But then he talks about, he goes, but really life just sucks. Yeah. And it's terrible. And that's why everyone goes to the Oasis.
These days, reality is a bummer. Everyone's looking for a way to escape. And that's why he was such a hero to us. He showed us that we could go somewhere without going anywhere at all. You don't need a destination when you're running on an omnidirectional treadmill with quadraphonic pressure-sensitive underlay. James Halliday saw the future, and then he built it. He gave us a place to go, a place called the Oasis. You can do anything. Go anywhere. Like the Vacation Planet. Surf a 50-foot monster wave in Hawaii. You can ski down the pyramids. You can climb Mount Everest with Batman. Check out this place. It's a casino the size of a planet. You can lose your money there. You can get married. You can get divorced. You can go in there. People come to the Oasis for all the things they can do, but they stay because of all the things they can be.
I want to climb Everest with Batman.
I do. That Paul and I were both laughing when he said that because it's such a great line because it shows Batman climbing up with his grappling hook but I mean, think about how heavy that statement is. Just we want to go because of everything.
All the things we can do.
Yeah, we stayed because of everything we can be. And that really kind of, as cool of a statement that is, and as nerdy as I am, and it really kind of breaks my heart, because we have totally lost sight of who we were made to be as children of God. And we've totally lost sight. Like, this earth that we're on and the universe that we live in was made to explore. God intended it to explore and to look. And when I hear something like that, like people would rather spend their lives online. First of all, all you're doing is plugging into the matrix. It's literally what you're doing. And the Bible even says you're exchanging the truth of God for a lie.
Because, as he mentioned, the truth is a bummer.
Yeah.
The truth kind of sucks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, man.
And who wants to deal with pandemic and supply shortages and the news and Facebook? It was interesting, as he's going and talking about this stuff, like drones are delivering pizzas and everybody's got the goggles and everybody's in their houses and nobody's engaging, because the virtual world, it's a lot more pleasant. I mean, it's a lot more interesting to watch a movie than to read a book.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to work as hard.
Yeah, at the end of the movie, James Holiday says, what I love about reality is it's the only place you can get a decent meal. At the beginning of the movie, when you see clips of people who are not wearing the virtual reality headset or anywhere the gear, are the ones that are dealing with food.
Yeah.
Pizza delivery shows up, they get pizza. There's another guy who's over there cooking on the grill while people behind him inside the house doing something. It's interesting that we are choosing a reality that doesn't feed our souls. We still have to have our body, fit our body, but we're choosing realities that don't feed our souls. And that's what's interesting. There's this moment where, because there's always a beauty, there's always a battle, there's always an adventure, and there's always friends that you be a part of. There's a moment where, they're trying to solve the riddle for the second key, and he goes out on a virtual date with this girl. Her name is Artemis.
Hang on. Before we get there, because I do have that clip and I do want that one.
Copy that.
But there's a couple of things that I wanted to pull up.
Okay.
One, from their vacation, it's like you can go surf a 50-foot wave. You can go hike, ski down the pyramids, hike up Mount Everest.
With Batman.
Because honestly, you should always try to be yourself, unless you're Batman. Then you always want to be Batman. But
true.
That thing is, that adventure was without risk.
Correct.
Right? And that's the safety, right? We want our escape to be risk-free. And by the way, there's some coolness to the fact that the game that frees everything up at the end was adventure.
Yes.
We'll get to that later. But this idea that my life sucks, how can I escape? Because I don't like the way that I feel anymore. And let's try this. Let's try the Las Vegas version, right? You can lose your money here. You can get married. You can get divorced. You can go to this 1-hour hotel, adults only place. What happens in the virtual world roulette in the sky stays in the virtual world roulette in the sky. And so this is where our conversation started, right? About the idea of porn. Because as an escape, because we just had a men's retreat with guys, and the thing that we consistently have discovered, we discovered in our own lives, but we see it in other guys, that the things that we think are the problems aren't the problems, they're the symptoms.
Correct.
So for this example, guys going and looking at porn, that's the symptom. They're looking for something that they're not finding in the real world.
Right.
And that can be, and so porn is sort of the most down looked upon, that's not a word.
It's most obvious.
It's obvious. You're not like, oh, wow, you should really do more of that. But it's the same thing. Like if you're struggling as a dad, you might find more peace at work. And so as you mentioned, being a workaholic. So you'll work 60, 80 hours a week. Same thing with ministry. You might find a place where you belong until you're spending more time at church than you are at home. I saw something, we call a guy who works 60 to 80 hours a week a workaholic. But if he does that for the church, it's a working for the kingdom. No, you're still unavailable for your family.
Yes.
You're just putting, you're rationalizing your, whatever it is you're seeking, whatever ache, because that's what you're doing. All this escapism, you're trying to fix an ache inside that can only be fixed through the relationship with the Creator.
Yeah. And
that's what Proven Men does.
It does. And it's not a silver bullet, guys. It's not, what it does is it's a standard 12-week Bible study. And I say standard. It's
it is far from standard.
I've never gone through a Bible study that the first day one, week one, I'm in tears and dry heaving because I realized how far away from God I'd let myself get. And it's been years. And I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I'm probably feel more free than I've ever felt. And what we've discovered in this process, and Paul, myself, other men that have chosen to walk this path, is that the more you step into these sucky places in your heart, the more you step in, and we've had this stronghold that we've allowed to be built in our hearts. And instead of dealing with it, we just pack it away. We just run from it. We go to an oasis. We try to find an oasis. And that's what I love about this movie, is because ultimately it's not about porn. It's not about this. It's about your wounds. It's about pride. It's about, selfishness. You don't want to deal with the pain. I mean, so what's interesting is Wade Watts starts off talking about that neither of his parents survived. And so now he's living with his aunt and her deadbeat boyfriend, who's he's just a tool. And I mean, it's really what he is. He's just a jerk. He's like, we've got to get away. And so what's interesting is the more he presses into the reality of, the more he starts finding his heart coming alive, and he starts seeing this crossover between the virtual world and the real world. And as the movie goes on, he's spending less time in the virtual world and he's spending more time in the real world. And that's where he's making real connections. That's where he's making real progress. He meets this girl, Artemis. He's watched all her Twitch live streams, all this stuff. He knows who she is. And Artemis is just her gamer tag. And so that's all it is. Just like Parzival is Wade Watts' gamer tag. As Wade, there's always a beauty. And one thing that guys do is we turn to women for validation. Yeah. And so he meets his girl. He sees, oh my goodness, I just got the key. She immediately says, oh my goodness, you just got the key. He gives her a hint. She goes and gets the key because it's just, these little things. And so they develop this friendship and brings them into their fellowship of the high five that is yet to be announced as the high five. Yeah. So in this process, she thinks she hasn't figured out where the second key is. So she invites him on this virtual date where they go dancing at this club. And in the process of it, it's a lot of fun. You got some 70s,
little Staying
music
Alive
going on. Yeah, a little Staying Alive going on. It's fun to watch. He's wearing Buckaroo Banzai, which that was my brother Mark. That was one of his favorite shows, which was a cheesy 80s movie, but it was great. It's just great pop culture. Anyways, so they're at this place, and Parzival has this moment of he's really connecting with this woman.
And to be honest, this is the avatar of somebody who appears to be a woman. As Correct. H mentions, it could be a 300-pound dude named Chuck living in his mama's basement in Detroit.
Chuck. Yeah, this cracks me up.
Yeah, so here they are at the disco, and listen for, I mean, obviously it's the gamer setup, but think about how often we live with that I let you see what I want you to see part of our lives.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it'd be cool if we met up in the real world.
Nah, you'd be disappointed.
No, I wouldn't. I like you.
You don't even know me. This isn't what I really look like. This isn't my real body. Or my real face.
I don't care. I want to know your real name. My name's Wade.
What?
I said my name's...
Stop.
Well, Buckaroo blows it. Shocking.
You crazy? You don't tell anyone who you are. You can't use your real name.
You're not just anyone.
You don't know me. You don't know anything about me. We've never met.
I do know you, Artie. I'm in love with you. Did you hear what I said? I said I'm in love with you.
No, you're not. You know what I want you to know. You only see what I want you to see. That's what you're in love with. This isn't a game, Z. I'm doing this to stop IOI. I'm talking about real-world consequences. People suffering. Actual life and death stuff.
I know.
No, you don't know. My dad died in a loyalty center. He borrowed gear. He built up debt. He moved in with the promise of working it out, but he never did. IOI just raised his living expenses, then he got sick and he couldn't afford to get out, and then he died!
I'm so sorry.
No, you don't live in the real world, Z. From what you've told me, I don't think you ever have. You live inside this illusion, and I can't afford to let you distract me.
Wow, talk about getting called out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. And she nailed it. He had compromised so much that he was beginning to think this was reality. And she was engaging in it, but she called out, and this, and Paul and I talked briefly about this before he hit the magic button of record, that the spiritual realm and the physical realm are much more tied than people realize. You know, I can tell when I get distracted with other things, it has a physical consequences with my mental distraction. And when I'm physically compromised, when I'm tired, when I'm hungry, when I'm weary, when I'm stressed, you know, those type of things has consequences on myself spiritually. But I'm here to say that when I am more attuned spiritually, when the physical happens, it's not as big of a deal. I'm aware of it, but I'm not this moment. Artemis, in this case, is very aware of what's happening in the physical and the spiritual realm, the virtual and the physical realm. And Wade is just now dipping his toes into it. He's just more thinking along the lines of, man, I want to get a holy hand grenade, and I want to get this suit that I can put on where it makes me feel everything. And he's more concerned about the stuff that he can get because of the spiritual aspect, not really what this conflict means in regard to that.
And what you see is that she is living a balanced life. Yeah. She knows what's real and she knows what's not. And as we'll see in the clip when he's talking with the enemy, Norton, I think.
Sorrento,
when he's talking to the enemy, Sorrento, he's like, you went into your trailer 3 days ago and you haven't left. And that's even what he said earlier. He's like, meals and bathroom breaks. Otherwise I'm in the Matrix. I'm in the Oasis.
Yeah.
And I think that, as you mentioned earlier, that name of the Oasis, if we think of the world that we live in, you know, as John Eldredge says, our hearts weren't created for a fallen world. They were created for Eden. And we don't live in Eden, not by any stretch. So we are looking for an oasis. We are looking for heaven on earth. And we might look to porn. We might look to food, work, sports, achievement, being the smartest person in the room. We looked at those things to try to provide a little bit of relief, a little bit of oasis in the dry and weary land in which we live.
Oh yeah. And there's even a quote that he says towards the beginning of the movie, before he really gets into it, where it says, people quit trying to fix problems and just tried to outlive them.
Yeah.
And I think that when it comes to addictions of any kind, or when I think it comes to reality, especially this thing, we're not really trying to fix them, because to fix them means you've got to step in these dark rooms. You've got to do some heavy lifting. You've got to reach out to other people. You can't do this on your own. And so you see this evolution that Parzival's going through, where he's getting called out. He's getting called into, it's not his small story anymore, where his parents had died. He's living in this crappy trailer house, multi-rise trailer house complex. That's all I could put it.
Right. He was trying to win the contest for what it would do for him.
Exactly.
And Artemis was going for it for what she knew the impact of this other company, IOI, would do on the world.
Right. And so the question that I had earlier was, how much of our lives have we compromised and given up for something that could be greater? We think, oh, if I just give up this, if I just compromise a little bit, then that moves the dial a few inches. When if we really step into it and dig in, we can move the dial miles in our own lives. There's also this idea of going all in. Are you compromising a little bit versus going all in? And Artemis says, no, I am all in. You don't understand the repercussions. She's also a nerd. She's also loves the pop culture. She also speaks Parzival's language. They speak each other's language. You can see there's a dynamic that's going on there between them. But she said, I can't let you distract me because there's more at stake in the real world. There's actually death. So because if you won this contest, you receive full control over the Oasis plus $500 billion. And so at that point in time, this would be a game changer for anyone.
Right.
And that's why Sorrento, who was head of an organization called IOI, was going after this. And he was using other people. And what they would do is they would find their debt. So like, let's say, okay, Matt, you owe $30,000 in debt. I'm going to buy your debt and you're going to work it off for me in the virtual realm. So you're going to be stuck in this headset all day long. You're going to do what I tell you to do. And if you zero out, if you die in the virtual realm and you lose your credits or you lose your coin, we're not going to reimburse you for that. And you have to start over. And so the debt just keeps piling on. And you think about the enemy, you think about shame, you think about all the guilt that the enemy just keeps on you, who says, oh, you've done this. And yeah, you know what? Jesus says he paid for your sins. Because the fact is, Jesus paid for your debt that you owe to God. That's paid for. But the enemy keeps speaking lies into us and says, oh, yeah, but you know what? That's shame. That's something that you just did that last week. You asked for forgiveness. Now you're doing it again. Oh, my goodness.
Well, and it's that idea that we can say, yep, Jesus came, he forgave us for our sins. But in reality, in the way that we walk it out and live it out, we still live like we still have to pay it off. It reminds me of the parable of the master with the servants who owed him money. And this one guy went in with basically, like you said, $500 billion of debt. And he said, I'll keep working and I'll keep working, because the master was going to threaten to throw him in jail until he paid it off. And what the master said was, I forgive you your debt. It's forgiven. So the servant went out and he saw another servant who owed him like $50. And so he said, pay me my money. And the guy was like, I don't have it. I'll give it. And he said, no, throw him in jail because he owes me money. He owes me $50. He had just been forgiven $500 billion. Because what that shows is he might have been forgiven by the master, but he was still he wanted to pay it off himself. He had to call in all his debts so that he could try to pay off his debt in his own strength and his own power. And that's what we see, especially with porn. They're like, oh, well, I have a struggle with porn, so I'm going to put all these software blockers on my phone, or I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And all that is for much of my life until, the last decade or so, that's how I looked at my Christian walk, was sin management, behavior management. Yeah. I need to train myself to do these things. But what the offer is, and as you mentioned, the study with proven men, it invites you to a deeper walk with God so that you don't even want those other things. You're like, I know how empty those things are. And as Parzival's about to see in his relationship or in his interaction with the enemy, he's going to see that the virtual world doesn't matter as much as he thought it did.
Correct.
Where am I?
IOI Plaza. You're a hologram in the real world.
That's a really cool rig.
Thank you. It's a brand new Habisha OIR 9400.
Looks like a giant hamster ball.
If you came to work at IOI, you'd get one of these.
I don't clan up.
You'd also get your own penthouse apartment in Columbus with the highest speed connection. In the Oasis, you get unlimited weapons, magic items, ships. You want the ship from Defender? It kind of can just jump into hyperspace. You want the Millennium Falcon?
You have that?
Anything you need to help you find that egg. And then there's the salary. $4 million a year. And if you do happen to find that Easter egg, there's a bonus, $25 million.
It is a lot of money. I could really use it.
But I didn't ask you here, man, just to help us find the egg, Parzival. I asked you here for what comes after.
What would Halliday say?
James Halliday is dead.
Yeah. He is. All that's left of him is this contest. And you know what? Just seems like he wouldn't want you winning it. A fanboy knows a hater. So if you want to know what I really think, I think you're full of shit.
I might say something off the record. I had to make the offer. The board expected it, but I was really hoping you'd say no. Because if anyone's gonna win this competition, it's me. My avatar gets the egg, because I'm the only one here with the balls to run this place.
Wow. You really switched gears there. From fairly reasonable to maniacal overlord.
You should be grateful, Wade. You won't be around to endure my maniacal reign. Yeah, that's right, I know who you are. Wade Owen Watts. Born August 12th, 2027. I also know where you are. Unit 56K, Columbus Stats. You were last seen entering your trailer 3 days ago. You haven't left since.
What are you doing?
With all that's going on in the world, you really think that anyone's going to give a damn about an explosion in some ghetto trash rat warren in Columbus?
Sorrento, don't do this. I'm not even there.
Not for long.
Whoa. He said it best. Well, that switched fast from fairly reasonable to maniacal overlord, you know.
All right.
And the thing is this, when you start compromising and having those kind of talks with the enemy, it appears like it's rational, only until it doesn't suit his best interest, because the enemy is coming to steal, kill, and destroy. And the next scene that happens is he actually sends drones that puts bombs on his complex he's living at, and they blow it. They destroy the only family he has left. They destroy the place he was living at, and they're trying to crush his spirits. And they're actually trying to kill him. And here he is, just moments prior, had been offered a $4 million a year salary, a $20+ million bonus, you know, a huge sick hamster wheel that he could live his life in. I mean, there's all this stuff. It wasn't really a hamster wheel; it just looks like a hamster wheel. But you know, there's all this stuff that the enemy promises you. People will turn to those things thinking it's a better way, but really, it's only with going into those dark rooms where we're most wounded. You know, the reality. And Artemis was doing that. Her dad had died because his debt had been bought by an enemy who was using him and exploiting him until he died. He couldn't pay it back. And so she was fighting against that. And then Wade, he was kind of fighting against it, but he was more of just along the lines of, hey, I just want to get out and I want to have fun and I want to have a better life. But now when he's come face to face with the enemy, where this intersection, and Paul, you already said it, this intersection between the virtual and the physical came together. And we struggle with that too, because of those moments with the spiritual and the physical. You know, when we feel the presence of something that's not good. That's why people like horror movies. I'm like you, Paul. I don't like horror movies. I'd rather not. And there's a great scene in the movie, in this movie, where they actually go through a horror movie,
right.
The Shining, and Paul said that was his favorite part. But it's that moment where you're engaging because you get a quick glimpse of the spiritual that interacts with the physical, and that's was like, whoa, what happened there? There's a glitch in the matrix. It was something was there, and so to hear the enemy all of a sudden start calling him trailer trash and all, you know, ghetto trash. I'm sorry, ghetto trash is what he said. And that you're nothing and I'm going to destroy you. When in actuality, all he did was empower him to stand up and fight. And that's what's like so exciting about this movie, is that what point in your life are you tired of shame and guilt and sin? At what point do you want to stand up and the great montage at the end, we're not gonna take it, you know, forget you. We're not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
We're not going to cow down to you anymore. At what point do you become all in?
As we were listening to it, you heard the voices, and you could tell a little more obviously visually, but the voice came not through his hologram after he made his decision. At first, it was all through his hologram he was talking, and then he was talking from himself. When he said, "What would Halliday want?" He's like, "No, I don't think he." But it was, and you can tell from the way the audio sounded that it was coming from him in the van or wherever he was. But it reminded me of the hero's journey that we see so many times. And it starts with this ordinary world. The first phase. That's him. His ordinary world was life sucks. The reality is a bummer. He says at one point, I think it's in the last clip we'll play, is, I just came to escape the shitty hand I was dealt. And so where do we go to escape the shitty hand that we're playing? And what most of us don't even want to acknowledge, want to say, is that we're dealing with some stuff, that our world that we live in is painful and terrifying, that we've been through things, and we just go along looking for a little relief, a little comfort, a little convenience. And that's the life, and that's the ordinary world. And then something happens. There's a call to adventure. And that happens there with Artemis, and now he's got the key, and one thing after another. But frequently, what shocks us, there has to be something shocking to get us to cross the threshold and become the hero. And in the original Star Wars, that was the death of Uncle Owen, right? When they blow up Luke Skywalker, it's like he wasn't going to go with Obi-Wan until they blow up the thing. You know, things happen. They're like, yeah, not going to happen. Then something intervenes. And they're like, oh, I have to go all in. In The Matrix, you've got the agents interacting. Well, if they just ignored Neo, probably nothing would have ever happened. But there comes a point where you've got to choose. And in his situation, in Wade's situation, what happened in the real world suddenly mattered a lot more. Mm-hmm. And then it was interesting because he had spent so much time. It's like, you've been gone for 3 days, or you haven't been seen for 3 days. And what happens after that is Samantha, who's Artemis in real life, actually rescues him. And he goes and he sees her, and they talk. And as they're sitting on top of the roof, looking out at the IOI buildings and looking at the slums where he had lived.
In the real world.
In the real world. They're sitting there in the real world. He has this sort of epiphany.
Wow. So much slower here. I mean, the wind, the people, everything.
You forget what it's like to be outside.
That is such a well done scene, because even as I listen to that clip, I slow down.
Yes.
Like, oh, yeah.
Music's slower.
You hear the wind.
And he mentions wind. You don't have wind in virtual reality.
No. You might have the appearance, but you don't feel it. You don't smell it. You don't taste it if it's food, right?
Right. So Romans 1 verses 18 to the end of the chapter is a great 3-point sermon that I've used for decades. I mean, not that I'm really that old. Oh yeah, I am old. But it starts off where it says the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. So there's a reality that people who are suppressing truth and don't want to talk about truth because of wickedness, we could go on for another hours about what defines wickedness. But the first point of this little area would be that God is the ultimate reality, that God has created this universe, that God has created reality, and therefore God is the ultimate reality, and we serve a God of truth and love. So we forget that in this world that's around us, that we forget that we have a God who is heartbroken for us. And God's not angry at you. He's angry for you. And so the reality is God is the ultimate reality. But the second point is that God gives man his choice of reality. You are a free will individual. God is not going to force you to serve him. God will give you every opportunity to come to him, because God calls all men everywhere to come to him. The third point is, but man's reality is a virtual reality. And this is a sermon I preached back in the early 90s, Oh yeah, I'm old. So, 30 years ago. My point being is that God is the ultimate reality and creator of reality. God gives us our choice of reality, and any choice we choose other than God is a virtual reality. And it's not real. And I really think that's why this is so prominent and it hits me so hard, because, you don't have to be involved with a struggle in sexual integrity or pornography to be out of touch with reality. You can just be so caught up in your own wounds that you're not seeing what's going on around him. It wasn't until Parzival was called out of his own place that he was able to unpack that. So I don't know. It was just actually I do know, that was a very powerful moment. That moment where his aunt died, and he lost everything, and now he had nothing to lose. And then he has this incredible call, because he realizes he can't take on Sorrento by himself.
Citizens of the Oasis, I am Parzival, first to the key. I'm here talking to all of you now because our future is being threatened by people who will stop at nothing to win this contest. Some of you already know this, and you've lost much more than just your avatars or your weapons. Some have lost their freedom. Some have lost their lives. And now, this. A force field around the third challenge. I only came here to escape the shitty hand that life dealt me. But I stayed, like many of you, because I found something much bigger than just myself. I found a cause. I found my friend. And yes, I know it's kind of a groaner, but I found love. And I don't want to lose that to this colossal douchebag, Nolan Sorrento.
This guy. Back to work, people.
He thinks that we're all too distracted to even notice. Nolan Sorrento thinks that we won't put up a fight.
And the thing that I really like, one, he's calling it out, but he's saying, this is what I did to escape my shitty life.
Yeah.
And this is where I want to kind of catch back up with people and say, you might not deal with porn. That might not be your thing. But you go somewhere. You might go to anger. And it's like, you may not have lost weapons or coins, but you've lost freedom. Mm. And so the question becomes, what are you in bondage to? What chains are you in that you're trying to escape that you just can't do? And like I said, anger is a big one these days. Division, criticism, judgment, shame, loneliness. And where do we go to take it? It could be alcohol. It could be food. It could be, hey, I don't drink that much. Just a glass of wine every night. And then you look and you're realizing it's a bottle every night. Mm-hmm. And it sneaks up on you. And if you don't have it, then you feel like you're going to die. Like those guys did. They're like, oh my gosh, if I, like that jerk boyfriend of Aunt Alice, I screwed up. And so I'm taking it out on you because I can't handle my own shit in real life. I'm going to risk it all to look for a shortcut, to look for an easy way out, to find my own piece of heaven, to find my own oasis in this desert world I'm living in. But what they do is, as he says, I just was doing it to escape, but I've realized there's a bigger purpose. There's a bigger reason. There's a bigger cause. And that's where life is found. It's not found in a video game. It's not found watching TV or zoning out. And the interesting thing was, again, we've talked, he's won. He gets control of the Oasis. He shuts it down 2 days a week to force people to go outside and engage.
I like what he says at the end of the movie. He's like, yeah, the first thing we did was James Holiday had a partner named Ogden Morrow. And so when he wins, he accepts it on behalf of the high five so that he's not doing this alone. He's sharing with his fellowship. And then they bring Ogden Morrow on as a consultant. And the first thing that he says is, hey, you got to get rid of these. You have to make it to where there's no of these
loyalty centers.
Loyalty centers can be a part of the Oasis. And they did that and immediately shut it down. So all this entrapment that the enemy was doing stopped. He goes, then we did something that wasn't a little less popular. And that was we shut the Oasis down for 2 days a week and forced people to engage in life. When I heard that the first time I watched the movie, I was in the theater and I watched it and I actually got tears in my eyes when he said that. Because imagine what happens is he's forcing people into both lives. You can't just be here. You've got to be both the physical and the spiritual. And it's funny because this is a little bit of a reversal here. They have chosen this reality, which is a virtual reality, and he's forcing it back into the spiritual, real reality.
Yeah, you definitely should watch it, especially if you love the pop culture references, which I enjoyed. Like I said, that Shining scene, I just kept cracking up laughing. So as we wrap up, I want to ask our listeners that the question: where do you go to escape when life feels like a shitty hand? When you say, "Oh, I've got 2, 6, 10 queen, all different suits," it's like, what am I going to do with that? What am I going to do with my teenager who won't talk to me, or my daughter who's doing this, or my my loved one is in the hospital, or what am I going to do when life sucks? Because life's going to suck sometimes.
Yeah.
What would it be like to slow down? To take. We think, oh well, I don't have time to do. One of my favorite things to do in the morning, and my dog. Whenever I pour coffee now, my dog goes to the front door because she loves sitting on the front porch and drink a cup of coffee for 5 minutes. Just to go outside and sit and do nothing and not be looking at a screen or not be on the phone call. To actually, how freeing would it be to not answer the phone when somebody calls? Like, I'll call my dad sometimes and he'll be like, I'm on the golf course. And I'll be like, why did you answer? It's like, or he'll call. He's like, I hope you're not busy. I said, if I was busy, I wouldn't have answered.
Yep.
That's sort of how this works, And then that whole idea of what happens when the enemy offers a way out. And that could look in a lot of different ways. That could be the extra slice of pizza. That could be a promotion at work. That you've gone from a job that you're pretty happy with to, well, that sounds kind of cool, and I'm at a new level, and I get new guns and a new hamster wheel to run around in, but it's now from working 8 hours a day, I'm working 10 hours a day. And yeah, I'm making 10, 15% more, but at what cost? And then what would it take to go all in? As you mentioned, Matt, that idea of going all in, and the fact that the game was won on adventure, but it wasn't a game he won. He discovered the Easter egg. He discovered the key by wandering around in the dark to find the little dot, and then you take it back to the beginning where you see the creator's name.
Yep.
Because adventure is where we see the creator. Mm-hmm. And not an adventure that's, on a video game or a screen, or we're like, I did this. Like my son, he's like, I threw for 800 yards in a game and my player had 5 touchdowns. I was like, and what does that get you in the real life? Nothing. It's like, what does adventure look like? Where do you find the creator? What makes your heart come alive, as we talk about a lot? Because of what the world needs is people whose hearts are alive.
Mm-hmm.
So Matt, any last minute takeaways?
No, I mean, Paul, you guys do such a good job on this podcast. I mean, I'm a fanboy when it comes to you guys because I'm a long time listener, first time caller, and so I'm just really proud of what you guys are doing. It's a calling into a bigger story. These fun movies we see, these adventures that we're brought into, are calling us into a bigger story, what God's put on our hearts, and not just a bigger story, but also a bigger purpose. And just really appreciate what you guys do. Thank you for letting me be a part of it today.
Thank you for joining us, and hope you get some rest before you got to pull call the next couple nights.
Yeah.
The body doesn't bounce back like it used to, does it?
No. My avatar looks pretty sick, though.
No, that's all that matters. Just get that hair done. Spend that coin on getting the hair done.
What hair?
All right, well, this has been Paul McDonald and Matt Gleaves talking about Ready Player One. So get out of the virtual world, turn off your screens, and spend 5 minutes looking at something real. And I hope you join us next time here on the Men at the Movies podcast.
Something inside has been awakened. I can no longer be who I was before. But if I am no longer who I was, who am I to be?